Welcome to the Lovecars On The Grid podcast, your global motorsport roundup with me, Tiff and Paul Woodman.
Welcome to episode 15 of Lovecars On The Grid podcast, a global roundup of all the motorsport around the world. And this weekend we had the Styrian Grand Prix, W Series, WRC, Moto GP, British Superbikes, IMSA sports cars, Nascar, BTCC, British GT. And I bet you didn't see any of it because you've been hobnobbing it at the, what's that, classic car show or something in London?
Yeah, wonderful. Scion Park. I was up there for 3 days hosting the talk stage and also commentating on the parade they have up and down the Lime Avenue at Scion Park. And we had, 1886, that first Mercedes car, a replica of a little tricycle thing. We had an amazing 1898 steam locomotive car from Scotland from 1898 and lots of wonderful aero engines cars from Brooklands. Then we had beautiful Rolls Royces, then hot rods from America. It was a really nice show. No rain for all 3 days and a bit exhausted, but yeah, I was totally cut off from the normal motorsport world. But don't worry, I've been busy. Got home times 30, times 30, times 30. And thank heavens for the Skybox. And I sort of know what went on last weekend. But of course, the Grand Prix, which probably glad I didn't have to sit at home watching the Grand Prix live, I don't think, in the end. It
wasn't that bad. I mean, I watched it, but it wasn't that bad. But it's amazing how those roles have reversed from Max and Lewis and Red Bull and Mercedes, almost identical, a carbon copy.
Yeah, I was going to say exactly the same thing. It was so good for a while. We had this, finally Max versus Lewis, but now it's gone the other way. And the lovely thing is that Mercedes are now complaining, well, we're quick around the corners, but we're losing 2 seconds down the straight, which is exactly what Red Bull have been saying for about 4 years. Well, we're quick around the corners, but we're losing 2 seconds on the straights. And all the press, Toto Wolff said we've got no more upgrades, and Lewis admitted it. And what's an upgrade? I mean, they love this little bit. I read today, though, that the Mercedes boys were saying they tried quite a radical setup. Well, trying a new setup is an upgrade to me. As you put new springs on it, it's an upgrade. I mean, what do they call an upgrade? Is a whole new front wing, perhaps they might not be making, but they think they might have tried something that didn't work. So they can still try so many different things on suspension setups to still try and claw back that disadvantage. And Max cruising around the front.
I'll tell you one thing.
Valtteri Bottas having a bad weekend again.
I was going to say, I'll tell you one thing they did try, which was different. The pit exit from Valtteri. They tried a different pit exit strategy. But surely because all the commentators, all the racing driver commentators are saying, oh, it's not a bad thing. They're just trying to get faster. They're shaving off a tenth or whatever it may be. But surely you try that when it's not a race weekend. Yeah. Surely. There's
people in pits. There's mechanics standing there. That's why there's a speed limit in pits. It's a very dangerous thing to lose control in the pit lane. But Valtteri well behind him. And Sergio Perez, much as people love him, and he has had that win, which was a bit fortuitous, but he still hasn't quite done what Red Bull needs, which is, when you've got the best car that they now have, he's got to get ahead of Bottas, he's got to get ahead of Lewis to take the points away. And again, he made a mess of qualified 5th, and he got stuck behind the wonderful Lando, another great weekend for a while.
Lando. Wow, what a breath of fresh air he is. And you know what I love about Lando? They're all the same. He's getting indiscreetly the little digs about, people didn't know whether I was going to be as good as Ricciardo, and Ricciardo is Leclerc. So technically, I'm probably better than them. But he didn't really say it, but he was saying it, but it's lovely.
Daniel had a terrible time, qualified 30. He actually got a really good start, Ricciardo, but then he had an engine malfunction that dropped him back. So he had a bit of a problem, but even so, he must be wondering what's going on. Ferrari couldn't get Leclerc. Probably one of the drivers of the day was Leclerc coming back through the field after that clash with Gasly. So they had but Ferrari, they're just battling with McLaren to be, best of the rest instead of battling up front.
So who's going to come third? Who's going to come third in the Constructors' Championship, Tiff? Who's your money?
Well, it's McLaren. McLaren, because
easily?
Lando's... Well, it needs Ricciardo to start getting some points because Ferrari had, 6th and 7th. So they probably got more points out of the weekend than McLaren did. I haven't looked at the table, actually.
Yeah, it's all very
But George
tight.
Russell nearly got a point. George was up there. Fantastic, And Yuki Tsunoda, the lovely little Japanese kid I love, he almost had a good weekend. But because he held up Valtteri in qualifying, that 3-place grid drop was so cruel because he ended up behind the Alonso train, which was a sort of the third group, as it were. And he could well have finished, 6th himself, Yuki, if he'd not had that.
Well,
Lance Stroll, really good opening lap, finished 8th. He's often, that was his one thing in his first year. He always had great opening laps.
Yeah, he did. He led a couple of times. He literally bolted out into the front. Yeah. You've got to sustain that. A bit like me, I've done that with the Caterham Academy.
Yes. Yeah, funny you should say that. I've just given you a new nickname for you now. Yeah, the Lance Stroll of Caterham Racing. That's you've earned that.
I wish I had his father's money, that's for sure, and his talent, and Lance's talent.
Then we had the W Series, had its first race over at in where we were.
Where
Austria,
was that? Austria.
It's Austria, but they had the new name as if to have a second Grand Prix. And the British girls, they're fantastic. We got 5 girls, women. I always say girls. I'm sorry,
people,
ladies. But it wasn't Jamie Chadwick that was out front. It was Alice Powell again, who of course won the last race at Brands Hatch. But of course, Jamie Chadwick can say, well, she was only getting the points to do the championship.
700 days difference. So her winning consecutive streak was a 700-day consecutive streak, because the last time she won was, of course, in 2019. Yeah. So 700 days. That's it. 2019. Yeah. That's incredible.
And Sarah Moore second. Another brilliant. Just got a little Jess Hawkins was 5th, but only after she'd punted Jamie Chadwick. I mean, she completely missed the braking somehow and just took poor old Jamie Chadwick, who wasn't having the best of weekends.
It's horrible,
sent
isn't
to the back.
It's a horrible
But Jess finished
feeling.
5th, and I mean, Jamie got back to 7th.
Yeah.
So we had 4 British drivers in the top 7, and the 5th one, sadly, Abby Eaton was having a battle against our lovely Vicky Maria, our very own Love Cars. Took Senna's advice of, if you don't go for a gap, you're not a racing driver anymore. Unfortunately, the gap was blocked by Abby Eaton, and they had a big clash near the end of the race and dropped to the back. So Abby Eaton and Vicky were up at the back of the field. But yeah, it was good racing though. And the front two were fairly pedestrian, with lots of hectic stuff going on behind. So good thing, good to see the women having good battles.
It was. The safety car definitely helped Jamie Chadwick get back up the field. But yeah, good. It's going to be a very tight championship. But we want Vicky, Forza Vicky to to, of course, do well on the next race. So, and
the 5 British girls.
Well done to the 5 British girls. Brilliant. I love Abby Eaton as well. Well, Jamie, we know Jamie, Ollie Chadwick.
Yeah.
All of the girls from all
you're digging a hole now. Dig yourself out of it now. You've just said you preferred Abby Eaton. It's too late now.
So what else is going on? Where should we go next? Do you want to go across the pond, or do you want to stay with the...
Yeah, let's stay with the World Championships. World Rally Championship. The Safari Rally returned to Kenya after 19 years. Unfortunately, the modern day World Rally cars weren't up to the pounding. I mean, it was nothing like the old Safari when they went hundreds of miles across the Kenya. This was still a sort of loop modern rally car rally, but it was rough and tough, and rocks were ripping suspension. And we very nearly had Takamoto Katsuta win for Toyota. He was still leading towards the end. He'd been a bit steady. I mean, Katsuta, he's almost getting there. Toyota sent him over to learn the World Rally Championship. He's the leading Japanese rally driver. But he's never really pushing. He always seems to be wanting to finish every rally to build his experience. And so that nearly won him the Safari Rally. But amazing Sebastian Ogier, who's always the master, the brain of all these. Well, the kids went flying and knocked suspension off with the rocks. Ogier came through. Katsuta second. Tanak was dropped back with a load of punctures, but he managed to salvage some of Hyundai's blushes. Thierry Neuville in the Hyundai was leading almost until onto the last day, but again the rocks hit him. So it left the Fords were 4th and 5th. With the French guy Adrien Fourmeau was 4th and Gus Greens with 5th, but then Fourmeau got a 10-second penalty for a little shortcut, which he thought was a good idea at a stage, but apparently track limits. He's got track limits now in World Rally Championships. Wow. And he got a 10-second penalty. It put him a 1/10 of a second behind Gus Greensmith. So the two Fords swapped places at the last minute.
So it was tight stuff. And for those of you watching, by the way, on YouTube, wondering what on earth are we doing drinking wine, it's evening. We normally record this first thing on a Monday morning after weekend, but I've been with the Caterham competition winner today up in Bedford. So we're doing some laps up there. For those of you listening, I'm drinking red. Tiff is drinking a little bit of Von Blanc by the look of it.
Yeah, we're right. Pinot Grigio, just a nice relaxed thing.
MotoGP?
Rally good. Yeah, MotoGP, as always, entertaining. But the Yamahas, Fabio Quartararo, the French boy, showed so much promise. I think he is going to go on to dominate this year's championship. And some of the more powerful circuits, Ducati are more ahead of them. But once it comes to handling, the Yamahas seem to have it. And they had a 1-2 ahead of Maverick Vinales, his teammate, who today has announced he's requested to leave the team, just finishes second on the podium, and Yamaha have let him go out of his contract for next year. A bit of shock news today. But the funny thing is, he was something like 18th on the grid Sachsen ring thing the week before in Germany. And he said he wanted to go home on the Friday. He was so embarrassed to be riding such an awful... So he must have had this decision that I'm now going to quit. I want to quit because this team is so embarrassing. And then he ends up second on the podium to his teammate. So he might be regretting. He probably put the request in before the weekend, and so now he's quit. He's leaving.
Oh dear! And they've accepted his resignation. So they obviously don't want him. So fair dues.
Moto2, Sam Lowes, our British battler, was back at the front of the Moto2s. He led for some laps. He qualified third, but finished fourth in the end. But at least had a good race. Jake Dixon, 22nd on the grid, battle up to 18th. So he's not really getting up the field. Moto3, our third and of the only three British riders, John McPhee, battled for up to 6th from 11th on the grid, but to no win. Whereas our newfound Spanish favourite, Pedro Acosta, started the weekend in hospital. He'd actually qualified 18th because they have this sort of two-stage qualifying system, so you get through into the final 18. But in the third practice before the 18 had their grid, he had this huge accident. Had to go to hospital, lots of bruising and damaged backs. But of course, what these kids do, they come out the next day, I want to race. And so he started 18th, got up into the leading bunch and finished fourth. So still has a strong hold in the championship league.
But you say these kids, you would do exactly the same. You would do exactly the same the next day, bruised, battered, whatever. I've seen you.
Not at my age. When I was 16,
you would.
Mate,
you did. Those bruises you had recently were probably the worst you've ever had in your life, and it wasn't motorsport related. It was stairs related. But that's another story. You were racing.
Just to go back to the MotoGP and accidents, Valentino Rossi had another. He was in 17th place.
He's got to
huge
retire.
Off.
He's got to
one
retire.
of the fastest corners. I really, really hope someone shakes him his head and say,
he's got
please,
to.
Valentino.
He is the master. I mean, he's the maestro. He could just retire now. It's still people remember him as one of the.
He runs his school. So a lot of the Moto2 and Moto3 are his prodigies. He's got his VR racing protege school that he runs down in Italy. So he's still got so much to do within the sport without risking his neck every weekend.
Yeah.
On Superbikes, had their first round in Britain. British Superbikes opened up. And more good news for Yamaha. 1-2 in MotoGP. And the Aussie Jason O'Halloran won all three races at Alton Park. So
dominating.
Great stuff, Superbikes. And Alton Park, I mean, that's a great track, whether you're Superbikes or sports cars.
Good stuff. Talking sports cars, IMSA sports cars.
Yeah, the IMSA series had the Watkins Glen 6 hour, very famous race. It was great news for Britain.
Hang on, whoa. You say IMSA, not IMSA. It's not an acronym.
Yes, yeah, no. Well, it is an acronym.
Was it an acronym of?
International Motorsports Association, I believe. Something like that. But no, we all call it IMSA. It's been going for years. So the 6 hours of Watkins Glen, and a win for the British boys that drive for the Mazda, Harry Ticknell and Ollie Jarvis. So, two really talented single-seater drivers now, as I keep on trying to point out on this podcast to say that they still get jobs around the world. They may not be in Grand Prix racing, but a fabulous result for them. Sharing their car with the American Jonathan Bomarito.
How old's Harry Ticknell? He looks so young, but he feels like he's been around forever.
They're probably 30-ish, him and Ollie now. I don't know. I'm guessing, completely guessing. Because they start now when they're about 2, so you never quite know how old they are.
Right. Must be time to move over to NASCAR, because I know you like talking about NASCAR.
Yes. Well, we had a disappointing weekend. This was incredible because, I was slightly upset when I was leading at Thruxton in my Ford Cortina. coming up the straight for the last time.
Corner,
it turns out it was the differential that exploded. We have since found out. Anyway, so after 45 minutes, and I was pretty upset. I said that was the most disappointing race I've lost in the last lap. The Kyle Larson, the number 5, who by now you might understand we worship in the Liddell family, was one corner from in a 3-hour race at Pocono for breaking the record and winning 5 NASCAR races on the trot, 4 championship rounds, which actually equals, and also he won the $1 million All-Stars race when the tyre blew. Imagine. Put him in the wall. He bounced it. He still finished 9th, smacking his way down the concrete. But it was an amazing race. I mean, because Pocono is hard to overtake on, and he chased down the leader. Eventually, after lots of little movers, I mean, the overtaking maneuvers in NASCAR can take 4 laps. You shimmy one way and you get the air and the aero. Unbelievable. And whereas the Formula One boys, it was an inquiry. Pirelli, we can't have a tyre blow. You need to kill me. We want a full investigation. Larson just said, well, I guess it wasn't my day. They accept tyres. You stress these racing tyres.
Yeah.
And as in Formula One, allegedly, maybe, some teams manage to run lower pressures, perhaps, maybe. In NASCAR, they're all running tyres as more cameras they can get or as lower pressures as they can risk to try and make them go faster. Teams will push their tyres and, it blew. One corner left. And he had to go it was a double header at Pocono. And he had to go to his backup car, started at the back of the grid in race 2 on Sunday and came through to finish 2nd. So, but yeah, nearly breaking all the records.
So was it exciting though? Was it 3 hours of excitement or was it?
Well, Pocono isn't normally. It's very strategic. And in fact, it turned out the second race was a big fuel run race. It's one of these, sometimes there's a safety cars, but it's 2 laps short of filling up to make the finish. They still go in, and then there's a lot of chess going on and driving as slow as you can. So it wasn't the most exciting race, but had plenty of tension all the way to the end. But yeah, it's not. I always say this, not every Formula One race is boring, and not every NASCAR race is exciting. Just because I go on about IndyCar or NASCAR, there's still dull races in every form of the sport.
Absolutely, yeah. And sometimes the elements help. Sometimes a blown tire helps. Bad strategies. So
pace cars come out.
Yeah, absolutely. So talking of excitement, BTCC, British Touring Cars. That was exciting. There's always excitement with that. God, it's always.
It was
almost wallop, wheel to wheel, nose to nose.
Everywhere. But it was almost a BMW whitewash of the weekend. They could have won all 3 races because Tom Oliphant, who's the backup for Colin Turkington, who's won the championship 7 times for BMW, but Tom's now in his 3rd year riding shotgun. He's only had 1 win before, and that was actually a reverse grid race, which I don't count as a real win. Sorry, Tom. That was last year at Brands. He had a win in the reverse grid, but this time he went from 4th to 1st off the grid, using, of course, the rear-wheel drive advantage off the line, which still exists. They tried to give them longer first gears. They tried to reduce their revs off the start. And they've always been trying to make it equal rear-wheel, front-wheel drive. So he actually led the whole race. And then he led the whole second race because, of course, he was on pole position for the second race, having won the first.
And for those sorry to interrupt, but for those who don't know, Brands Hatch Indy, it was Indy, wasn't it?
Indy, yeah.
Is a really hard track to overtake. It's so short. So pole position makes a massive difference.
Yeah. But it was Tom Ingram that managed to just get a screwdriver in. It was into the last lap, and he just got inside him into Paddock Hill Bend. They touched at Paddock. Then he had the run on him up to Druids Hill, and so he was through. And then to add insult to injury, Ash Sutton got inside him, Adam Clearways on the run to the finish line, and dropped poor Oliphant Tom back to 3rd place. So that was probably the best move, Tom Ingram, in moving the Hyundai to win. And then the 3rd BMW win, well, the second one didn't happen, was by Morgan, Morgan got the lucky draw. He's running the private BMWs for the first time. But he was only 12th in race 2, but the draw out of the hat for reverse grid was number 12, and he duly scarpered off into the distance. So that was Adam Morgan's first win in a BMW. And you said it earlier, you can't overtake at Brands. So the top 12 were reversed. So guess where Tom Ingram finished, having won race 2?
Go on.
12th.
Wow.
So, Ingram, even Tom Ingram, who'd made this amazing move, and Ash Sutton got up from 11th to 8th. So, yes, even the quick boys. So a reverse grid pole at Brands Hatch is a very valuable thing to have.
Wow. But it's an exciting track, and the Caterham boys, we all go there in August. So that's going to be.
Of course, the Formula 4 was there, the Porsches. I haven't got all the results there. And so I'm waiting to find out. Just Dan Camish and the other boys, they're all Harry King, both dropped back from pole position. So there must have been some clashing, which I haven't found out the news of. British GT Silverstone Grand Prix circuit. You watched that on the internet and stuff. It was fabulous racing, You got Mercedes, and it was a big battle. The Mercedes won, but it was a fabulous dice that went down to the last lap, overtaking by the 2 Lamborghinis, who were both run by my brother's Barwell Motorsport team. So I think my brother had a very, very nervous last lap, because they were 2 Lamborghinis actually swapped places, second to third went to second. But fabulous to watch. British GT, BTCC, Superbike. We got so much great racing.
And great racers as well. Great racers, drivers as well. I was talking about your brother today with John Barnes. He's raced for Barwells before. So
John Barnes was British GT champion, I think, at one stage, wasn't he?
Very good. And he's Caterham expert. So I was with him today. And speaking of Caterham, I guess I've got to say that next week I'm at Silverstone. How about
there are more important. We haven't done what's coming next weekend. Don't jump the gun now. You might think that's the most important. There is another Grand Prix.
Okay. Austrian Grand Prix.
Formula 1. They moved to Austria, except it's the same track.
It's already in Austria at the same track. They just call it Austria, not the Syrian. It's bizarre, isn't it?
Well, they have to, I think. You've got to have a different name. Whether or not the W Series is supporting against, we've got another W Series race.
Brilliant.
And whether Hamilton can try a doesn't have to have an upgrade or update, if he can change his suspension, hopefully get back on it. The IndyCar boys go around another spectacular road course, Mid-Ohio. Which another great, hard to overtake there, so may not be so much overtaking as Road America, where the NASCAR boys are. So if you missed the NASCAR and missed the IndyCar boys at Road America, then watch them. It's the best circuit in the world for overtaking. These big V8s rumbling around. So it should be a great NASCAR race at Road America. And we all know who's going to win, but that's another thing. And then finally, yes, I did also write down there is some sort of 50-car Caterham Novice Academy race with people like you dive bombing up the inside, doing a Lance Stroll. Are you sure this is a good idea, 50 cars in one race?
I think it's a terrible idea, but it's going to be fun. I can't wait.
You just get the one race. It's not a double header this weekend. Is it just one race?
It's just one race, one day on the Sunday the 4th of July. So for all of our 3 American viewers, listeners, the 4th of July, qualifying on the 4th on Sunday, and then the race a few hours later. So, and I'm delighted you're going to be there. I'm delighted for the first time, Oliver, my son's going to be there, and my bit of stuff as well. You allowed to say bit of stuff these days?
No, for goodness sake. What do I do with it? What do
my girlfriend, she's going to be there as well. So it's going to be good. I can't wait.
Can you even say girlfriend anymore?
I don't know what you're allowed to say.
No, I don't think so.
You know what? Well, no, I'm gonna stop there.
No, don't dig.
Quit whilst I'm ahead. Hopefully, Tiff, I can't wait to see you on Sunday. I'll see you this week anyway.
Yes.
But, well, thanks for listening. Thanks for viewing. As always, comment below, please. Comment. But we're bad, Tiff, because we get lovely comments below and we don't respond. So we will respond to these comments personally.
Okay. All right.
So we'll personally respond. So have a good night. Cheers from the red wine and cheers from the white wine.
Cheers all.
Cheers.